Hey everybody, it's your Advocacy Sherpa, Josiah Brown, here to give you a little bit of a wrap up of the Advocacy Summit. And with the coolest shirt of 2025, the Advocacy or Bust, signed by Jack Johnson himself, which were available at Advocacy Summit this year in Sacramento as a fundraiser for the foundation. Please get your donation into the foundation because, as you know, a lot of the thought leadership that has come out of the advocacy work of DEI came from the foundation side. So get that done before the end of the year. We're going to talk about Advocacy Summit here, and I just want to bring you to some of the highlights. We have had a continuing theme through the years that advocacy is not just building relationships with your elected leaders. Obviously, we hear John Lambeth in our head saying, be there before you have to be there. It is that, but it is not just meeting with the people who fund our work. It is not just the work that we have to do in the Capitol. Advocacy is not the same thing as lobbying. Advocacy is making sure that we are making an impact from our work of destination marketers and managers and destination stewards, and then that we are storytelling that work and making it be understood and having an army, hopefully, of people in our destination who understand the impact of what we do, that we become known, valued, and important in our destination, and that other people begin to tell our stories and see the impact of our work. So advocacy is a thought process, it's a body of work, it's a 365 action, and it has to involve everyone in the organization at all levels of the organization, staff and board, that we make sure we're telling our story right. And that's what Advocacy Summit is about. Sometimes people have wondered, is this just where you talk about how to square up your numbers for your presentation? It's so much more. Our impact economically and our numbers matter, but advocacy as an action is so much more. And we'll dive into some of the high points here. We really are living through a moment in time, and Andreas kicked us off with that idea that we are kind of living through what he called the poly-crisis moment. Some leaders led through 9/11, led through the Great Recession, led through the pandemic, but really those were kind of giant moments we navigated through. We're in this poly-crisis era, it feels like, where environmental, social, political, local issues are happening all the time. And it's going to become the new normal. I think it was Matt from Madden who said, the greatest swordsman is not worried about the second greatest swordsman. He's worried about the fool. Now, he said this in the context of how we have to plan and be ready, almost like we're wargaming. That was the theme of his presentation, that maybe if something bad as it relates to policy is being proposed in your destination, we have to go put a hurt on that. You know, maybe we actually sometimes have to think of ourselves as relationship builders all the time, but when something is proposed that is bad for our community vitality, bad for the tourism industry, and especially bad for the destination marketing and management industry, we have to be ready to go put a hurt on it. And if you think about that fool swordsman, if you look at House Bill 1221 coming out of Florida, which would lay waste to the destination marketing funding model, that's about as big of a hit as you could get. It's about as foolish as you could get, but it's a reality. So we have to be ready to go put a hurt on that if necessary. And I thought that some of these ideas that floated to the surface of people explaining their advocacy positions and what they've had to do, especially with bills like that, was really helpful to realize that we're in a moment where we're going to be managing multiple things, and that's just the reality. He also talked a lot about the toolkits that DI are launching, and also this hotline, this advocacy response task force, where you can call up and maybe DI has the answer, or they can pair you with someone who has the answer. So they're building a little bit of a task force and a toolkit, and more on that as we go down the months here. Our keynote, David Allison, is one of the foremost thinkers in values. He led us off with a conversation that should sound familiar by now. Lead with your values. This is a little bit of what even the tourism lexicon has brought to us over the years, that we know the values of our residents matter to them and they matter to us. And the more we speak in the language of values and how we're aligned in our values, the more support that we're going to get. Maybe saying that tourism is big business is not actually as impactful as tourism matters for every job in my community. It's the same essential idea, but the value of the jobs in our communities is more aligned in our messaging. And so that was a great way to lead us off. There were several sessions on becoming more politically savvy and how we have to kind of sometimes map the relationships in our destination and figure out who knows them and who are influencers in our destination. The message of supporting our industry coming from our industry is not as effective as having influencers and business leaders and non-for-profit leaders who go carry the water for us because it matters to them, not just because we've asked them to, but because they truly believe that they have a stake in defending our story, and that was important. Certainly, Bill Geist he had a session on his continuing work working with boards to up-level the savvy of boards and how they impact our destination board or our destination's work through the effect of our boards and how they have to be activated more and more. It's incredibly important work to get the influencers activated into your destination. Jack Johnson took the stage and talked about something that I think has been floating out there, certainly in my mind, for a little while, which he positioned it as destination fitness, which I thought was brilliant. He talked about running a marathon and how when you run a marathon, when he used to run marathons, it's about being fit to go a long distance. That we have sometimes adopted this idea even in our communication of more, more, more. Next year will be more money, more growth, more visitation, more. What happens if we start to think about destination fitness and say, what is the correct steady line that we're going to manage into the future, and what does that look like? Is there a time of peak tourism coming? Is there a time that we're actually going to have to think about the fitness or the balance of our destination through that lens? Excuse me. Amir took the stage again with resident sentiment, but really drove home the point that resident sentiment is not a vanity metric. It's not even a curiosity metric. Understanding resident sentiment is going to be an essential metric of how we lead forward, because as it's been introduced to us that the resident is first, that is our stakeholder number one. It is for them that we're doing our work. We have to know what they're thinking. And if you pull out a resident sentiment number that is, 58% pro but 30% neutral, we know there's always going to be those negative voices, but that giant bar of neutral is actually where our work has to begin, to move more of those people from neutral to understanding the core good that tourism can bring when it is well balanced to a community. It lifts up the vibrancy and it creates more retention and recruitment and investment. MMGY did a deep dive, the DNX Factor future study, MMGY's future study, had advocacy painted all over it. And that's really a lot of the leaders kind of realizing that we're in the age of advocacy right now and storytelling for what we do for a community through our work. And it was painted all over that study. They're releasing quarterly a deep dive into it. And so Cassandra did give us one of those deep dives. All of this is available as we roll forward on the DI platform and on the MMGY platform for you to be able to see how we're talking about advocacy in a deeper way through the future study. Had a chance to see a lot of the presentations from some of the solution providers. Always great to pop into a session from Clarity of Place and just seeing how they're working on that place balance, as they call it, which is really everything I've been talking about. Resident, visitor, business community, how we're making sure all of them have a balanced approach. Hunden, they're doing some placemaking in some of the major urban centers with entertainment, really looking at transformational development, which I thought was great. Some of these developments that we're going to get are not only going to be transformational for our visitor economy, but for the community itself. A newcomer on the stage was, or a newcomer into our industry, is Waresight. They're coming out of the UK, and they have this model where they go to a lot of the small businesses who have not been as digital savvy over the years and help them get up into digital savvy for online booking and online reservations so that we can capture more of the visitors while they're here. It's a really clever model that I was encouraged to see. Coming in and out of those sessions was really good. As I mentioned, Matt Clement with Madden did a great session on just thinking through, perhaps even in that war game mindset, when we have something we have to go put a hurt on because it's detrimental. What else did we have here? I had the pleasure of moderating a session between Jill Delaney and Anna Tansky when they really did a session kind of about what went wrong. And when you really got to the bottom of it, it was meant to be a session of kind of where somebody made a mistake and it kind of cost the destination some time or some funding. When you got to the bottom of these stories, they had done everything that they could do, but it was really neat, that humility to come forward and say, hey, we made a mistake and it cost us time. Don't make this mistake again. That's one of the major values of Advocacy Summit. It's not just what you're hearing from the stage, but it's also what you're hearing from your peers while you're there. Aaron from Future Partners took the stage and talked about the reputation study that they have been working on. Future Partners and Destinations International have been working on together. This is something you want to put your eye to. It is a reframing of the concept of even your brand. We have destination brands, but with that B2B business, they're thinking about safety, they're thinking about success of their event and what's coming out in the news and how they're finding our destinations being talked about is lending to this idea of reputation. And they have some helpful measurements of what they're looking at and then how we message into what they're looking at to show them that, what you might be hearing in national headlines is not actually true on the ground. You're going to have a great event while you're here. And then Jack, I don't think he hit the DI stage for the last time. Maybe he did. I don't think so. But he took the stage again to close us out and really showed his framework for advocacy plans, which again just shows the genius of this team. Jack said something from the stage that I wholeheartedly believe, which is that we are in great hands with Andreas and the rest of the team. Jack has provided some incredible leadership, but he has also worked with the future leaders, and I think we've got a really good future ahead of us with the advocacy department and the work that they're doing. He showed the framework for the advocacy plans. They want to give that framework, that ability for you to go out and build your own advocacy plan and keep it actionable. I would say, kind of in closing, that I did have the opportunity to present a session on public speaking. I believe public speaking is kind of the last mile of advocacy. If we can't say it well, if we can't hold a room, move a room, convince a room, persuade a room, we're going to have a hard time telling our story. So it's not just that we have to tell our story. We have to learn the art of storytelling and persuasion and be able to speak it well. We want to be proactive in getting into our destinations well before there's a problem. We know that fundamentally. And the last thing that I would just kind of chime in on is really do the work to find your incremental and your direct impacts. If you have a beach where 2 million people visited and you go and say, our department markets, manages, and stewards this destination, and look, we got 2 million visits to our beach. The people that you're presenting with all throughout the community might say, well, I don't know that they're responsible for all 2 million of those. And they might be right. We watch over the whole economy of the visitor economy. We watch over the whole destination. We work to steward the whole destination. But there's probably some of those that would come anyway, that elusive line that is used to attack us. So find your incremental part of that. Find how the off-season campaigns and the PR hits and the events and the sports and the buses and the international and the marketing you did that had a direct return, and come and say, we are proud to have 2 million visitors to our beach. But 400,000 of those directly came because of us, and you would lose that if you didn't do this important work of marketing and managing a destination. And look, we even with those 400,000 returned you 10 to 1 on your money. And by maintaining that 400,000, we're actually protecting the other 1.6. The idea that we are showing direct impacts and incremental impacts and showing stewardship of the whole pie, but being careful to not tell a story that you're going to get attacked on. And that's kind of a lawyer technique. A lawyer never asks a question that she doesn't already know the answer to when they're interviewing somebody or cross interviewing somebody. I can't come up with that word right now, but the idea is don't put yourself in a vulnerable position. Tell the right story, tell the story of impact, and tell the story of your return on investment, and leverage your influencers and your people in the destination that are going to be able to carry our story far beyond what we can as leaders and what our staff and our board can. Advocacy is a 365 action. Tune into everything the Advocacy Committee is doing in 2026 and beyond. Thank you for the opportunity to MC this event. It was a real pleasure, and we will see you advocating in 2026.